Geek Therapy Radio.
Y'all are crazy. That podcast I uploaded yesterday with the urinal boogers in the title, I'm not going to say it's taken off like wildfire, but I'm looking at the stats right now, and y'all clicked on that faster than you've clicked on any episode in a while. Seriously, that episode has more listens within way less than 24 hours than my last weekend show did. The last weekend show is doing well. It's on average. But the urinal boogers title, why? It's not a sensational title. It's what I actually talked about. It's just I was not expecting so much activity to be spawned from a title like urinal boogers. So, I guess, I guess we're all geeks about something, and if urinal boogers is your thing, then... Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, reminding you that you are loved. You are worthy of love, both giving and receiving love. You're worthy of your own self-worth. You're worthy of loving yourself. Honestly, sometimes it's hard to love ourselves. It's often easier to love other people, but loving ourselves can be next to impossible. So lean into your geek thing, whether it's a new hobby or an old hobby, rekindling an old hobby, discovering a new hobby. Find a geek thing, because I think that once you start delving into your geek thing, into a new hobby, a new passion, a new interest, you find out that you are capable of way more than you thought you were, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. That's how we kind of chip away at that wall between us, our self-loathing, and our own self-respect. Okay, on to the podcast. I won't say meat and potatoes because there's actually a few different subjects I would start off with telling you about. And that first subject is in the vein, in the genre of video games, and that is that according to Steam, every classic Half-Life game is free. That is on Steam, and it's only for a limited time, and I would imagine it has everything to do with what I mentioned on Geek Therapy Radio several weeks ago about the new Half-Life VR game, Half-Life Alyx, ALYX, and I forget when Half-Life Alyx is coming out. I believe I know it's this year. I think it's March 2020. Yeah, I'm reading the article. I believe it is March 2020 for Half-Life Alyx. So, if you have Steam, then go to Steam and you can get for a limited time the classic Half-Life games for free. What is that limited time? I would imagine it is that March 2020. Guess I should have read this before I started talking about it. So, yeah, it will... Well, actually, you know what? I did read it, and there was no official end. There's no official end date. It's just whenever Half-Life Alyx comes out. So they didn't announce any sort of end date for these free versions of the classic games. But Half-Life Alyx is slated to come out in March 2020, and one could reasonably assume that that's when this free deal on Steam will end. That's really all I wanted to say about that. I've talked about Half-Life Alyx several episodes ago. Actually, I've got my browser open. Let's see. I'm only going to scan this for a second, but I'm going back through my old episodes. I'm looking at the titles to tell you what date I talked about Half-Life Alyx, and thing is not working that great. So let's see. If it comes across my eyes, then I will let you know. But I did talk about it, so just scan through the backlog. I'm pretty tedious with how I title these episodes. So if you're curious about Half-Life Alyx, it's a VR experience coming to all major VR platforms, especially PC. So Oculus Rift and so on. Valve's own VR. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by looking through the titles here. Maybe if you just did a word search for Alyx, A-L-Y-X. So, move on. Next story. If you want to lose weight, or at least not feel as bad about weight that you may have gained after the holidays, that we're all human beings. There's lots of good food around over the holidays, and you know what? We might eat a little bit of extra cake and too many candy canes, and who knows? If you want a scale that will make you feel better, you should buy one of Under Armour's scales, because they have pulled the plug, according to Ars Technica, on all their, quote, connected tech. So, apparently if you step on an Under Armour scale, it's as useless as a brick, and it won't really tell you your weight. So if you think you weigh 200 pounds... step on an Under Armour scale, because potentially it might tell you that you're 150 pounds or you're 130 pounds. Now, I'm just making a complete joke about that. The real story is that if you bought Under Armour products, digitally connected products, Wi-Fi enabled products, internet connected products, IoT, Internet of Things type products from Under Armour, then they are just pulling the plug on that. They will no longer be connected. They will no longer track any of your health information. They will no longer, basically what it boils down to this. Under Armour tech products will not perform the function you purchased them to perform. At least not fully. So that's interesting. And that's an interesting concept, that in such a connected world, such an Internet of Things connected world, that potentially the developer, the company, can just say, nah, we're discontinued that. So the thing you just spent $1,000 on, nah, it's not going to work. It would be like if you just bought an Apple Watch and Apple said, we're not going to support watches anymore. So great, I just bought this $300, $400, $500 thing, and now it's not doing what I paid you to have it do. The real interesting concept there, like I just mentioned, is that a company from afar, from their ivory tower on high, from afar, can just decide one day that, we took your money, but we don't like this product anymore. We can't handle this product anymore. We can't support this product anymore. So the thing that you just bought is basically $1,000 brick, or a few $100s. Another interesting concept with that is when a company is so loved that basically the community supports that company's servers, or the servers they left behind. Case in point with this is a team called Rebel, R-E-B-B-L-E, that single-handedly, well, not single-handedly, I mean the team, multi-handedly supports the Pebble infrastructure to one degree or another. So the Pebble smartwatch, I've talked about the Pebble smartwatch so much, ad nauseum, on this show, that I'm so sad when Pebble went under several years ago. Pebble hasn't been around for a while. They were sold to Fitbit, and I think Google bought up Fitbit now is the most recent thing. So Pebble's dead. And my favorite part about Pebble was that it was an e-ink display, which means that you charged it and it would last for a week, if not 2 weeks for the later models. It was kind of the perfect blend of technology and application for a smartwatch. You didn't need this always-on display that would, in modern smartwatches, that would suck up battery life. the display was always on because it was an e-ink display, just like your e-readers. It was a beautiful piece of design and function. So the community loved Pebble so much and were so distraught and so bummed that Pebble went under, that got sold to Fitbit, and Fitbit largely did nothing with it. They certainly didn't bring back, to my knowledge, any e-ink watch. That the old Pebble community of customers took it upon themselves to keep the Pebble ecosystem afloat, at least to some degree. I know that I pay $1 or $2 per month to the Rebel team to have certain services like weather and different functions and voice recognition still active on my Pebble watch, even though I'm not wearing a Pebble watch right now. My daily driver for the past few months has been my Samsung Galaxy Gear S2. Still a wonderful watch in its own regard, still fully supported by Samsung. But regardless, back to my point, people loved Pebble so much that when the company went under, the customers took it upon themselves to keep the Pebble ecosystem going, and they called themselves Rebel. That's interesting. I think a similar thing might... I hesitate to use Apple as an example because I don't see Apple going under anytime soon. They recently became a $1 trillion company. So Apple's a bad example. What's a good example that maybe you can think of? GeekTherapy at iHeartMedia.com or GeekTherapy Radio on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any way to get out, reach me. GeekTherapy, the email, geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com or geektherapyradio.com. There's contact information in there too. What do you think is a company that's kind of small-ish, that if it went under tomorrow, that the company's so well loved that the community of consumers, community of customers would keep the functions of that company afloat? I think honestly, as I think about it, I think Tesla might be one of those companies. I know Tesla's not a small company by any means, but the cult of Tesla worshipers leads me to believe that if Tesla went under tomorrow, that the customer boffins, the engineers and coders and all that stuff that make up Tesla's customer base, at least some of the customer base, would keep Tesla's infrastructure alive and keep it running. Do you think? I think that's a good example because even though Tesla's huge, people worship it. They absolutely worship Tesla. It's kind of weird. Following Tesla on Twitter and Elon Musk on Twitter is, man, super culty, super religious vibes. It's very creepy. Not to say Tesla's a bad company or that the products they build are bad products. Despite my feelings on calling their driver assist functions autopilot, I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. But I think Tesla itself and Tesla cars themselves are cool. I would love a Tesla. I want a Tesla Cybertruck. But I think there are certain customers in their base that worship Tesla and worship Elon Musk the same way a Christian would worship Jesus Christ. That's a bold statement, but I believe that's absolutely true. I think there are people that absolutely worship, if not pray to, Elon Musk in their Teslas. So yes, I'm being, halfway facetious with that statement, but I don't think there's going to be many people on the outside looking in to Tesla and their consumer base that would argue the opinion that a lot of these customers, Tesla customers, worship at the altar of Tesla. That what they say about Tesla, how they hype Tesla, is creepy, is borderline creepy. I could not see worshiping a piece of technology or a human being like that. It doesn't register. It doesn't compute with my systems. As religious as I am, I do not stray away from the fact that I am a Christian. I still can't see me buying a product, a car, and just having a religious experience with it. I look up to the cosmos. I look up to nebula and stars and planets, and I have a religious experience there. I have a religious experience deep diving into biology stories. I have a religious experience deep diving into any sort of scientific story. That's where I get my religious experience. Also church, of course. But you get what I'm saying. I'm more in wonder of kind of the natural processes of the world and the universe. That's what brings me closer to my God. I think people get in their Teslas and they feel this, some of them at least, a lot of them for us to notice, feel this unhealthy attachment, this religious attachment to Elon Musk and Tesla. That's weird. It's weird to me to worship an object and a person. And I know to a lot of atheists out there listening, they might think, well, you know what? It's equally as weird to worship a deity. Yeah, I get it. I understand. But for all those who want proof in the pudding, there's proof in the pudding that a lot of Tesla owners appear to worship the brand in the way that any other religious person, traditionally religious person, would worship their deity. That's just my take on things. It's a little weird. And I want a Tesla. I won't worship it. I won't bow down to it in my driveway. But I will drive it to my church and enjoy it very much. That's about the extent of my love affair of Tesla would be if I ever got a Tesla. So all of that was to say, what do you think is a brand that if it went under tomorrow, that the customers themselves, the engineers among the customer base, the coders among the customer base, what am I looking for? The programmers among the customer base would basically pick up the reins for the company that went under and continue the ecosystem, keep everything working themselves. What would Tesla's customer base that would keep Tesla up and running, keep the infrastructure? What would they call themselves? They might call themselves the Elon Musts with a T. Like the must, like they must keep it running. All right, that's lame. Next story. Oh, this is a smartphone. I don't really care. All right, dirt cheap Nokia 2.3 comes to the US for $130. Hey, it's Nokia's cheapest smartphone. Let's look at the specs. What are you going to get for $130? 6.2-inch screen. That's pretty big, even by today's standards. 1520 by 720 IPS LCD. That's not the highest resolution in the world, but believe me, it'll get you by for sure. 2 gigabytes of RAM, 4,000 milliamp hour battery. That's pretty good. MediaTek Helio A22, which is a 12 nanometer chip with 4 Cortex A53 CPU cores running at 2 gigahertz. 2 gigabytes of RAM doesn't seem like enough nowadays. This has an FM radio built into it, an FM radio antenna. Have you ever noticed that cheap Chinese smartphones include an FM radio antenna? I always thought that was pretty cool. For some reason, I always thought that was pretty neat that the cheap phones do that, and flagships don't. Flagships should have like Sirius. Actually, that wouldn't work because you need line of sight to satellite dishes. Sirius satellite radio goes out when you go under trees. So satellite radio definitely wouldn't work on your smartphone that's sitting in your pocket or in your purse or in your backpack or in the interior of most buildings unless it's in the window. Not a good idea. To round it out, the Nokia 2.3 does come with a micro SD card slot, which is nice, but it is the charging port, the data port is micro USB, which even in a cheap device, the fact that it's not USB Type-C is a bit of a head scratcher. It blows my mind in 2020 that there can be new devices coming out that do not support USB Type-C interface. That blows my mind. Micro SD should have been phased out as quickly as possible after it was phased in. Micro SD is a nightmare as far as durability and longevity are concerned. USB Type-C is so much better. So much better. So, moving on to another interesting topic. And this next topic is one of those topics that kind of gets more and more puzzling, more and more of a head scratcher. The more you think about it, the more you read into it. Apparently, Google is planning to bring Steam, that we mentioned earlier about Half-Life. Steam, everybody knows what Steam is. Steam is available on PC, Linux, and Mac OS, but by far it gets the most mileage, the most use, the most compatibility on PC. So Google wants to bring Steam to Chrome OS and Chromebooks. Now, on the surface of this issue, it sounds like, okay, well, I guess game streaming then with Google Stadia? No. Google owns Stadia. This is why it's baffling. This is one of the areas where it's baffling. So Google owns Chromebooks, the Chrome operating system. Google owns Google Stadia. So why would Google want to bring Steam over to Chrome OS to compete against its own Google Stadia platform? Google Stadia works on basically anything with access to the internet. So Google owns Google Chrome. Google owns Google Stadia, which, notwithstanding all of Google Stadia's problems, so why would they want to bring Steam to Chrome OS? Well, for some sort of Steam streaming, game streaming service on Steam, like maybe they have something up their sleeves. No, the Steam would run on the native hardware. You would download games to your Chromebook and run it off of whatever the hardware in your Chromebook is. And the whole point of Chromebook is that they are very, very, they're not gaming notebooks. They are not powerful laptops. They are meant to run a very light operating system and do very light kind of web surfing and office tasks and watching YouTube. So Chromebooks are one of the furthest things from a gaming PC you can possibly imagine. Yet Google is tinkering with the idea, thinking about bringing Steam over to it to run games off of the native hardware of the Chromebook. I'm not making this up. So what could possibly run on it? Chrome OS is a Linux-based system also, I believe. Let me double check on that. I believe Chrome OS is based on Linux. It supports Linux apps. Yes, it supports Linux apps. So maybe it's not built on Linux. I actually don't know off the top of my head if Steam built on Linux. I want to say I thought Chrome was built over Android. Maybe someone can clarify that for me. What Chrome OS is sitting on top of, or basically the origins of Chrome OS. At any rate, Chrome OS does have a Linux client. It supports Linux apps. Chrome OS supports Linux apps, and Steam, this is what I'm getting to, the Steam does have a Linux client. You can download Steam on your Linux computer. That said, It's optimized for PC. Most of the games that you would download on Steam, far and away, are optimized for PC. That's why you don't buy even super powerful MacBook Pros with awesome graphics cards and 8-core processors to play Steam games, because the games aren't optimized for macOS. Games on Steam are not optimized for Linux. They're optimized for what most people will be playing most games on. Most people will be playing computer games on Windows. So most games are optimized for Windows. That doesn't mean they won't work on Mac OS and they won't work on Linux. It just means that they're optimized for Windows. So you have a Chromebook with crap hardware compared to any, especially PC gaming rig, wanting to download and run Steam games natively. Why even bother? Why that, even with the fact that it would compete against Google's own Stadia service? It makes no sense. This makes no sense. This is a bad idea on every level. A bad idea any way you look at it. In any way you look at this. If you're Steam, you're thinking, okay, fine, don't sweat off my back if you bring my software to your operating system and to your products, but it doesn't. Steam on Google Chromebook doesn't make a lick of sense for every conceivable reason. What do you think about that? GeekTherapy at iHeartMedia.com. Really good way to talk to me also is on Twitter. I hate Twitter. I mean, I'll check it. It's a good way to keep in like instant touch with listeners. It's really good for that. But Twitter's existence on the whole is just an absolute quagmire, cluster F, dumpster fire. Twitter's the worst. Society is no better for Twitter's existence. That said, Twitter is a good way. I wouldn't have a Twitter if it wasn't for the radio show. Believe me. But it is a good way if you treat Twitter correctly, if it's all how what you put into it, what you get out of it, how you use it. And I use Twitter to stay in touch with listeners and stay in touch with other content creators like LGR. I talk to Clint on Twitter all the time. Colin from This Does Not Compute. I really wish the 8-Bit guy would get Twitter, but he has more common sense than the rest of us and doesn't have a Twitter. But it's a good way to, you don't have to get on Twitter and be all political and stupid and whatever. You can just have it as a vehicle to stay in touch with your listeners, stay in touch with your fans, stay in touch with whatever. You don't have to use it to be provocative. Sometimes I feel, here's a little side note before we get on to Lego for a second. Can I bare my soul to you all a little bit here? You never have before in the podcast, Johnny. Well, yeah, I know. Just hold on a second. I often feel that, so there's this tug of war inside of me to grow my brand, to grow the Geek Therapy Radio brand, to grow the Twitter to tens of thousands of followers, to grow the YouTube channel to tens of thousands of subscribers, million subscribers, to grow the radio show listens to hundreds of thousands of listens per week, to 1 million listeners per year, whatever, just get 1 million subscribers all across the board. Move my show to prime time, drive time here in a market of 6 million people. There's that drive to do that, to compete and build the show as big as I possibly can. The opposite end of the rope on this tug of war game, this struggle in my heart to build my brand, is that I refuse. It makes me sick to think about playing the game the way that you think I should be playing the game. And what I mean by that is, I don't go onto Twitter and take sides politically. I don't go onto Twitter and I don't participate in every single challenge that comes down the internet pipe. I don't try to do extreme things on YouTube. I don't try to do extreme things on my show. I don't say extreme things. I don't adhere to extreme mentality. I don't peddle extreme mentality. I don't do clickbait. I usually don't do clickbait. I try to make the titles enticing for you to click on, but I don't engage in clickbait. At least when you click on a video on YouTube, for example, it's what I'm going to talk about in that video. It's what I'm going to show in that video. But I just refuse to be extreme. Like I don't want to be abrasive and nasty, and I don't want to be using a ton of cuss words and doing all the clickbait and extreme things and to try to bring all sorts of attention on me for stupid reasons, if that makes sense. But again, the other side of that rope, like I just mentioned, is trying to build a brand. So all of that to say this, I'm trying to build the brand in a legitimate way. That's why I involve all you listeners so closely in this show, as much as I possible and as much as I can, as much as you reach out to me. And why I let you, quote unquote, behind the curtain so much of Geek Therapy Radios. I want you to be involved because if, Lord willing, and you the listener willing, that this thing does grow and keep growing and becomes this big thing, that I basically have an entire listener base, dare I say fan base, that would keep me humble, that would have been here from the beginning to remind me of my roots if I ever do start going off the clickbait edge or start saying extreme gross things or being overtly sexual or whatever disgusting ways. If I start taking a huge side politically or getting ingrained politically or saying politically divisive things, that I have a listener base with me to reel me back in. I would say that's the main reason I try to involve all of you so much in Geek Therapy Radio, is for that reason, that if it does grow, if I do start getting too big for my britches, I have an entire base of listeners and fans or whatever that says, Johnny, remember when you were starting out, you said you wouldn't do all these things, that you would. I don't anticipate that I would ever do those types of things. Okay, if the YouTube channel had 2 million subscribers tomorrow, I wouldn't change a darn thing. If the podcast had 1 million subscribers tomorrow, I wouldn't change a darn thing. Because obviously the audience grew because they latched on to whatever it was about me and my brand and my product that they liked, and me changing it in an extreme way wouldn't work. It would alienate too many people who I've struggled to get on board here at Geek Therapy Radio. So I just wanted that little side rant about this tug of war in my soul and my heart. It's like I know that since I've been doing Geek Therapy Radio for the past going on 3 years now, I could be so much bigger than I am right now. The brand could be so much bigger. I could be making so much money by now if I just played the media game. If I played the game to the T, if I followed that rule book that says, hey, you want to get attention, you got to be extreme, or you got to be really stupid, or you have to take one sort of side. You have to say a bunch of cuss words. You have to talk about boobies and wieners all the time. You have to be out there. You have to be the shock value. You have to get the eyes and ears that way. You have to be shocking in some sort of way. Figure out how you're going to be shocking. And to me, the most shocking thing I could have done is not be political. The most shocking thing to me I could do is invite as many people in as possible and be that little voice in the desert saying, you guys are fighting over stupid stuff. We have way more in common than we have that divides us. And I know that human beings are tribal. Our nature is tribal. Our nature is to see a group of people coming over the horizon and instantly be defensive about it. But the internet has connected us so much. Communications has connected us so much that I don't think the tribalism is necessary anymore. And yes, I do realize that it's fighting against your own evolutionary biology. But I just thought so that all goes to say the most shocking thing I thought I could do, the biggest stick in the mud I could be, the most attention I could draw to myself, or away from myself, depending on how you look at it, is to talk to a conservative about, I don't know, science. Talk to a liberal about airplanes, video games, art, music, vice versa. Conservatives, like anybody. Talk to anybody about just cool stuff that we get to explore in this world. And then be encouraging to everybody from every walk of life. Hey, one of the common threads we have is that we struggle with our own self-doubt and our own self-worth. So maybe if I just tell you all, like, even if you don't believe it, even if there's new listeners to the show that come in and they hear me say these affirmations, like roll their eyes, oh, what is this little hippy dippy stupid stuff? Because you know what? There may come a time in their life when they're bashing their heads against their steering wheel, crying, bawling tears because their life's fallen apart. And if me reiterating that you are worthy and you are worthy of love and you are worthy of your own self-respect and self-worth, if that echoes in their head at all in those moments, even into one person, then that's good. That's a good thing. I know that I could go to my grave, whenever I go to my grave, happy and content that I at least tried to put good in this world. To what degree it was effective is inconsequential to at least going through this life making an effort to do so. Because so many people go through this life making zero effort to do so. They just keep spreading hurt and pain and shock value and disgusting things into this world. And I'm not saying that I'm not a gross person or that behind closed doors in certain company that I don't enjoy a ruckusly raunchy fart once in a while. But overall, what I try to put into the world, what I try to radiate through an antenna and across any sort of digital avenue is just good. Just put some good out there. Just try to. That's the effort. That's the effort that try to make. And if I do that, if I make that effort, no matter how successful it is, I can go to my grave with a smile on my face. I tried. I tried. I don't have to wonder if I tried or not. I know that I did try, and I can be content knowing that I did try. Hope that makes sense. Okay, the last story here. Sorry, thank you for listening to my little diatribes there. Lego is releasing an ISS set in February. So early this year, if you like the International Space Station, Lego is releasing an ISS inspired Lego set, and it looks really cool. It looks really, really cool. It's got all the solar panels and different modules on it. Really neat. How many pieces are in this set? Ooh, $70. That's not bad. Actually, if you know Lego sets, 850 plus pieces. Okay. 7 inches by 12 inches by 19 inches. $70. That's not bad. You know, Lego sets can be extremely expensive. Hundreds of dollars. Thousands of dollars even. So that's really cool. I think that's going to wrap it up for Geek Therapy Radio tonight. Thank you for listening to me go off on my sidetracks and my rants or what have you. But I know that's why you listen. If you're a repeat listener, I know that those are the reasons why that you keep listening. And I very much appreciate that. That even though we talk about tech and video games, that we can get real here sometimes. That's the shocking thing that I add to tech. You don't go onto YouTube, watch Linus Tech Tips or Marquez Brownlee. I love those guys. I'm not saying that they're bad, but they're not going to go off on a 10-minute, side rant about how valuable your life is, or your self-worth, or your self-esteem, or anything like that. They stick to tech, and I know why they do that, because their channel has to focus on that. It would be weird if they all of a sudden started getting real with people. So I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, the little thing content that I add to my stuff is just going to be that, hey, you're not as bad as you think you are. You're actually quite worthy of love and self-respect. So, anyways, thanks for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. Just a reminder, I haven't mentioned the Patreon in forever. There's a Patreon there, and 5% at least each month goes to mental health causes. Well, not causes for mental health issues, but causes that help with mental health issues, if you know what I mean. Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. It goes to help those with mental health. So Patreon's there. GeekTherapyRadio.com is where you can find that. What else was I going to remind you? Oh, the music links. I use a lot of different music in these podcasts. The music is always in the podcast description. Link to it so the artists can get their exposure. What else is there? I guess there's nothing. Thanks for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I love you all, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Geek Therapy Radio, Saturday night at 10 on KPRC 950. Or listen anytime on our iHeartRadio app.